Hello and welcome to another episode of the PropSwap podcast. We are your hosts, Ian Epstein
and Luke Pergande.
And we are also the founders of PropSwap, the first marketplace to buy and sell sports bets. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We've got another great episode for you. We will get into a crazy World Series parlay. We'll get into some big sales that happened over the last week on PropSwap involving the baseball playoffs. We will talk about our favorite stake or swap picks. But first, let's talk a little NFL action and some action that we saw in person. Luke, we'll start with you. You were in attendance for the Bears-Patriots Monday night game, a game that New England was heavily favored. People were writing off the Bears. I see you're wearing your Bears hat right now. Just writing off Chicago. It was a foregone conclusion. But the Bears came in and made a statement. So what was that like being in Foxborough for Monday night?
Yeah, Gillette was rocking. Walked in there. I had been there one other time last year for the Cowboys overtime loss, where CeeDee Lamb had that overtime touchdown. But it's a super cool stadium, middle of nowhere, very very far from the city of Boston. I was joking with Joe Murray of the 98.5 The Sports Hub, #1 sports talk show in the country. They had me on Sunday morning in studio. Got to go see their studio, but it is a easily 90-minute drive, certainly on a Monday night with, battling other traffic. And we were joking that, during all the broadcasts, and you tell me, they always show, Quincy Market, which is, downtown Boston, Boston Harbor, next to the north end of Boston. That is nowhere near where that football game is getting played. So,
yeah. People hear the word Foxborough, and, I don't think they really put two and two together, where exactly Foxborough is. They just think, the stadium's in Foxborough, but, they don't actually really realize how far away from the city of Boston it is. And, it's not the Boston Patriots, it's the New England Patriots. And that's probably for a reason.
Fair. Yep, fair. But yeah, really cool environment. I walked into that game. I'm a Bears fan, obviously, but I walked into that game having very low expectations. What have the Bears shown us this year to make me have high expectations? We've looked quite meek in the beginning of the season, but Justin Fields came out, punched him in the mouth. Bears looked sharp. They ran the ball well. The Bears did. And I did not realize this until traveling to Boston on Friday morning. I get in from New York City. There is a quarterback controversy in New England, and I didn't know that until traveling there. They are very much in favor of Bailey Zappi. I would say it was 60-40, maybe even 70-30 of the fans in the stadium, just chatting with people at sports bars around Boston. They call it Zappy hour. They want Zappy in there. And, first drive he takes over, throws a touchdown strike to Devontae Parker. So I get it. It's crazy that Mac Jones won Rookie of the Year last year, and we're having this conversation, but Zappy looks good. And they just call Mac Jones a stiff. And not that Zappy is this mobile quarterback. He had 50 rushing yards his entire career at Western Kentucky, I believe. But they're ready for a change, apparently.
Yeah, so it definitely seemed let's just talk about it before the game. It definitely seemed from my point of view, that most of the people were still in favor of Mac Jones. That, Mac is still the quarterback. Bailey, had come in and wasn't really, just did enough to win the game. But if you're going to compare just the two about quarterbacking skills, Mac was the guy. But it seemed like after a couple of drives, the crowd was chanting for Bailey's name. He came in, had the 2 touchdown drives, but then still, they got blown out at the end of the day. So, I mean, would you say that the Patriots fans' opinions were one thing before the game, a different thing during the game, and now a third different thing after the game?
No, I would lean Zappy was a slight favorite in terms of consensus. So like I said, I would say it was around 60-40, maybe pregame 55-45 Zappy to Mac, and now it's 60-40, if not 65, in favor of Zappy. So I mean, you talk about the chance. I think the guy that took me to the game, is a 98.5 Sports Hub sales rep. I think he started the Zappy chant. Like he was chanting for Zappy the whole game, and we were talking about a pregame at the tailgate, and so yeah, I had no idea until this week that there was even a quarterback controversy, but it's alive and well.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, and he's definitely a loud, talkative guy. So I could definitely see him not being shy about standing up in the middle of the crowd and yelling something out. I as well was in attendance for an NFL game. Got to see the Jets play the Broncos. That was a not as exciting or high scoring as your game. We'll just say that. Man, Brett Rippon, he ended up making some okay throws during the game, but man, there were some probably jitters or nerves or something. But he missed some wide open receivers early in that game. They only scored one touchdown. Did the Broncos? Breece Hall had a fantastic run to open the scoring, and it's really a bummer to see that he's now done for the year, because he was probably going to be the favorite for Rookie of the Year. I mean, he's an electric running back, and that's definitely going to hurt the Jets as at least try to scrap their way to a playoff spot. But I mean, you look at that AFC East, and you could easily make the argument that the Jets are the second best team in that division. But no offense to Brett Rippon, but he may want to find a new day job, because I'm not so sure that starting quarterback in the NFL is what he's going to do. But I'm sure that the Broncos fans are very different than the Patriots fans, and that there were some they were unhappy, but generally people were just they weren't that mad. There was really no booing. They were just kind of there to have a good time. And I think the Broncos fans are a little more of a nicer crowd than you find on the East Coast, like at a Patriots or Giants game.
Yeah. I mean, look, they've had a ton of success over the last 15 years, so I understand them wanting wins right now. Like we are not waiting for anything. We want to. If you have one bad game, you could be on your way out. They had a certain quarterback who was there for a decade and a half, who was the greatest football player ever. So I get it. I understand why they're a little fast paced. But yeah, Bailey Zappi right now, 4th lowest odds at 14-1 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. Lowest, Kenneth Walker, 2-1, Damian Pierce, 3-1, Chris Olave, 7-1. But there he is again. You mentioned Rookie of the Year odds, and I agree with you that Hall would have ran away with it, but those 4 guys are up next.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of Zappy, Rookie of the Year, it would make me too nervous, because it just seems like Belichick has absolutely zero issue just benching one guy and throwing the other guy in there and kind of doing a platoon thing. Obviously, I think he would prefer to have one guy be the starter, but it's when you've got a backup who's right there, who's sort of on an equal playing field. I mean, I just think that the leash is going to be somewhat short for Zappy. It's not like they're just going to let Zappy go out there and make mistakes just to get him reps. If he doesn't perform, Mac has come back in. And do we know who the starter is going to be next week? I mean, do we know if it's going to be one or the other?
I mean, we didn't know. We were listening to 98.5 on the drive to Gillette. They didn't even announce it. Nobody knew at 90 minutes prior to kickoff. Yeah. So per usual with Belichick, we won't know until an hour out. And apparently, and I'm sure that Zappy and Mac filter their answers for what they say to the press, but they both were he communicated to us well what was going to happen, and basically it was Mac's going to go, but there is a very real chance that Zappy would come in. Yeah. So per usual, Belichick, he's going to keep that close.
Yeah, that was tweeted about an hour before game time by Schefter that expect to see both quarterbacks in this game. So we will see how that plays out in New England moving forward. Switching topics, the World Series is set. We've got one team who was the favorite to reach there, and another team who was not expected at all to get to the World Series. Of course, I'm talking about the Astros coming out of the AL and the Phillies coming out of the NL. But there was one guy, at least, who was expecting this. I'm going to tell you a little story that's been in the news. Back in April, a Colorado bettor bet $50 on the Astros to beat the Phillies in the World Series. Sportsbooks will put up these things called exactas, which essentially means that you are naming not only the top two finalists, but who's going to win out of those two. So this bettor, he bet $50 on Astros to beat the Phillies in the World Series. This was back in April at odds of 2,500 to 1, 2,500 to 1. So his bet of $50 is to win $125,000. However, those odds I just mentioned, that was a mistake. Those should not have been the odds, and that was a mistake done by the sportsbook BetMGM. Those odds really should have been closer to, probably should have been entered as 250 to 1, and it was a mistake to add an extra zero. But if you actually look deeper, it probably should have been even lower than 250 to 1. You can figure that out by looking at what the Phillies were to win the NL in April, which they were 12 to 1, and the Astros to win the World Series was 10 to 1. And if you parlay those two things, you get odds of 142 to 1. So this Colorado bettor was basically given a gift of 2,500 to 1. Obviously, it means nothing if this doesn't actually happen, but so he's got this massive $125,000 bet. The bettor has declined interview requests, but he did tell a BetMGM rep today that, quote, "I'm not hedging." Exact quote, word for word, "I'm not hedging." So if he were to hedge, I thought we would talk about a couple different scenarios in which he would go about doing that. Obviously, option number one, he could sell that ticket on PropSwap. The market value for this ticket right now is $81,000. That is how much someone would need to wager at the Astros' current odds of minus 190. As we record this podcast, the Astros are minus 190 to win the World Series. So there's a market value of this ticket for $81,000. Again, he bet $50. And then, of course, option number two is he could make a wager on the Phillies, right? He could make a wager on the Phillies so that if the Phillies win, he would get the money from the second bet. In order to win $81,000, that's like I said, the market value of this ticket, he would need to wager $50,000, right, on the Phillies to win $81,000. Now, I probably don't have to tell you that someone who's betting $50 does not have $50,000 liquid cash to make a wager. However, there's been much chatter online. Luke, I know you've read a lot of it, so I'll ask you. A, what would you do if you were this bettor? And B, talk a little about why the term just hedging by betting the Phillies is so overused and is not as practical as people may think.
Yeah, where do I start here? So let's just briefly talk about getting the money to hedge, because that's step number one. We can talk about how much you hedge and like how you get down, if you can even get that much down. That's a World Series matchup. You'll be able to get that down. But, let's talk about where the money comes from first. Because if I read one more time on Twitter that a bank is going to loan you money for a sports bet, I'm going to lose my mind. Bank of America is not handing out personal loans off of a sports bet. They are not taking a sports bet as collateral and then lending you money for a personal loan, and we're going to collateralize it with a sports bet. That is not in the business for Bank of America or any large bank that I'm aware of. And then, those guys take the most risk. And then you talk about a smaller bank. You think some podunk bank in Aurora, Colorado is going to lend money for this? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So cross off banks lending you the money. Then I see, I would say that's the number one response on Twitter. Second most frequent response of how you get this money is just borrow it from your family. Okay, like I grew up in, lower middle class Chicago. I imagine this guy is, middle class-ish in Colorado. Like, ain't nobody giving me 50 racks to make a sports bet. So I don't understand where you get the money to make this sports bet, to make this hedge. So yeah. And then him saying, I don't hedge, like we're not going to get along. Like, I feel like we've most people in America are in favor of some hedging. The fact that your answer is zero hedge when you can turn $50 into 81,000 guaranteed. So that's a return of 1,620x on your money. Very, very few people have ever hit 100-to-1 winner. This is 1,620 times your money if you sold that ticket on PropSwap. So, just undereducated market on Twitter, a miseducated market on Twitter because you're wrong that banks are going to lend you money. Just absolutely stunning. If he's not going to hedge this thing at all, I don't understand.
Yeah. I think a loan shark is a more, reasonable thing, but guess what? Loan sharks, if you can find one, guess what? They take massive amounts of interest. Okay, so no one's giving you free money, right? People don't just hand out free money. So people act as if someone's just gonna be like, yeah, here's $50,000, go make your bet, and hit me back.
Just call me later.
Yeah. Just hit me back whenever. Don't worry about it. And I don't want anything for my time or the capital, right? Like nothing's free in life, right? So. I'll believe it when I see it that someone could walk into a bank and get a 5-figure loan to make a sports bet. Now, probably the most common thing I see is making a 5K bet, a 10K bet on the Phillies, right? Just to just to get something back if the Phillies win. But again, it's like, how sick would you be if you only bet 5K to win, 7,500 on the Phillies, and the Phillies win, and you just had ridden this team all summer long. You see the magic, like you've probably been rooting them all along, and then the Phillies are such a fun team to watch, and like I said, they are filled with professionals. You would be sick to your stomach with a $7,500 return on this type of bet. So the other option that we didn't talk about is there always is the option, and I know, Luke, you say this all the time, to sell the bet, get the 81,000, and then go make a new bet on the Astros, right? Because again, he would say I would be, I'd be even more sick if I hedged and the Astros won. So it's like, okay, fine, take the 81,000 and then go make like a $36,000 bet or whatever on the Astros at minus 190, and what does that return? Basically, $15,000, and then it's like then you got the best of both worlds. But point being is, of all the options, not hedging a penny is probably not the best option.
Ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. Sell the bet for 80 racks. Take 50,000 of it. Take 50,000 and go rebet the Phillies.
Astros.
Fine. Sorry, yeah. You take 50,000 of it and then go bet the Astros.
Yeah.
Yes. Fine.
Yeah. So my guess is this is not the last we will hear of the story. I was reading an article, and BetMGM, obviously this was a big mistake on their part, but one of their employees was quoted as saying, like, I am much more worried about the mattress Mac risk we have than I am about this 125K ticket, and they're going to try and juice this for all of the publicity they can get, and they are actually flying this better to Game 1 of the World Series. So. They are going to try and juice this, so we will be getting more of this story. But were you going to say something about Mac?
I was going to say something about the Astros. I had a meeting last week with with an executive, a very large sports book. They are not in a good position with the Astros. I didn't realize how bad of an outcome this would be for sports. So it is. It is not good. People have just been pounding the Astros the entire season, and they just haven't got enough MLB futures on all the other teams to outweigh this liability if the Astros win. So, the Astros winning is not a good outcome for a very large sports book. And then I was just going to say, great job figuring out that's a mistake, because you're right. Like, parlaying those together would pay you a little bit more than half of what this parlay is paying. So great catch.
Yeah, no, I mean, like I said, the true odds probably in April should have been like 142 to 1, and he got 2,500 to 1. So that was quite.
Oh, touche. So so that's like 20x difference. Yeah. Like, complete mistake.
Yeah.
Complete mistake.
But yeah, like I said, Mattress Mac, he has bet $10 million at different sports books at an average of 7.5 to 1 odds. So he stands to win $75 million if the Astros win the World Series. And I saw one today. He bet $1 million, straight up $1 million with win at 12 to 1 odds. So I do not think the win has been getting $12 million worth of MLB futures bets at other books. It's if you see the Astros shaded quite a bit more than you think, it's probably because they don't want Astros action. They want Phillies action. Moving on, just want to hit a couple other quick sales before we get to stake or swap. This one came across the ticker over the weekend. I thought this was interesting on the Padres to win the World Series. We had a customer. He bet $100 on the Padres to win the World Series at 18 to 1. This was back in July. And then on the day of the Juan Soto trade, he sold that ticket for $158, odds of 11 to 1. So turned 100 into 158 real quick. And then obviously the Padres did not perform up to the expectations that people were thinking after that Juan Soto trade. They, of course, lose Fernando Tatis for the rest of the year due to violation of the steroid rule. But the Padres still obviously made the World Series. The Padres made the playoffs. However, after the Padres lost Game 1 to the Dodgers in the NLDS, the guy that bought it for $158 sold it for $42.50, odds of 44 to 1 for the second buyer. And it's funny. I'll do a quick note about the guy who bought the ticket for $42.50. He buys so much stuff that I look at and I'm like, how could this possibly win? Like he buys, I use this affectionately, but he is kind of a dumpster diver. He will buy a ton of tickets for cheap. Most of them look like losers, end up being losers, but then like once or twice, maybe more times a year, he just comes out on top. Things that come to mind: he got in super early, or he got in on the Canadians when they were down 3 to 1 against the Maple Leafs, I think it was, in the playoffs, and then of course they came back to go the Stanley Cup. Last year, he got in on Salvador Perez to have the most home runs when he was 200 to 1 in June, and he's done it again. He bought the ticket for $42.50 when the Padres were down 1-0. Of course, the Padres win 3 straight games against LA. And then when they were down 2 to 1, he knew that was the time to get out. And he sold that ticket for $400. So over an 8x return in basically, a week and a half in between when the Dodgers were up 1-0 and when he sold it in the NLCS. So just a great transaction, and just another reason why because on PropSwap you have these panic sellers like, oh no, Padres go down 1-0 against the Dodgers, like there's no way they can come back and win this thing, and they are selling tickets at way below face value just because they just want to get out of their account, just get rid of it. And so you can find, it's not always about finding like the favorites at the good odds, but you can find some amazing deals on the long shots for people who just want to get out, panic sell, and once again, it worked out for this guy.
Yeah, great find. Great job pulling that data. Making 8 extra money in 7 days is something you'll not be doing in the regular stock market, and certainly not this year's stock market. So that's great. It's, and just think of how much larger those numbers could be as we scale this company and these bets start to get larger. Like, buying something for $4,000 and selling it for $50,000. It's super interesting, and that's amazing that he timed that properly. That dumpster diving is exactly what I would call that, and that's great. Like, Mark Cuban talks about all the time, like, be a coupon clipper. Just you want to buy stuff for value when you can, and sports betting is no different. You can swoop in and get a 44 to 1 Padres World Series future when they're just down 1-0. Like, that's a great price.
Yeah. So he's a very active customer, and I think this once again proves that there is some serious money to be made just by buying and selling only on PropSwap. You don't even have to go to the book. And then another sale I want to talk about quickly. because I know you're a big soccer guy. Back in April, a customer made the following 4-leg parlay. He had the Mavs to beat the Jazz in their playoff series at minus 600 odds. He had Kayvon Thibodeau to be selected pick number 4 or higher in the NFL draft at minus 190. Thibodeau was selected 5th by the Giants, so check those two off, win-win. He then had the LA Football Club to win the MLS Cup at 8.5 to 1, and the Phillies to win the World Series at 50 to 1 odds. He bet $58 to win $50,000. Odds of 860 to 1. So as I mentioned, the first two were winners back in April. Fast forward to today, and LAFC are in the MLS Cup semifinals, and they are currently the favorite to win it all at plus 115 odds. And of course, as we've discussed, Phillies are in the World Series at odds of plus 160. And so over the weekend, this customer sold that $58 ticket for $3,850, $3,850, which was odds of 12 to 1 for the buyer, which was an amazing deal for the buyer when you consider the fact that, again, the LAFC are plus 115 and the Phillies are plus 160. Now, granted, the sale happened when the Phillies were up 3-1, but the odds really didn't change that much from up 3-1 to winning at 4-1. And the odds really should have been closer to 5 to 1. So the fair market value of this ticket's like $8,900, and the buyer got it at $3,850. So we will see if this buyer chooses to resell it, because again, the LAFC, they're in the semifinals and the favorite, but again, Phillies are the underdog. So we'll see if he wants to try and flip this thing, because he got an amazing deal and he's got a ton of margin to make a profit here. But again, another situation where the seller was desperate for whatever reason to get off the ticket and gave an amazing deal to the buyer.
Yeah, so $58 into $38.50, what it sold for on PropSwap. That's a 66x return on your money. So 66 times your money. Again, I would challenge how many sports bettors have ever hit 100 to 1 winner. I would think it's around 10%, maybe 20% of people that have ever made 100x on one bet. This guy turned, no questions asked, made 66 times his $58 investment. Like, incredible. Just numbers that, again, Wall Street and the $1 trillion industry that Wall Street is, like, those guys and girls are clawing to make 7% a year. Like, this guy's making 66x on his money. So bravo.
Yeah, and I just round of applause for just throwing in 4 different sports and including a NFL draft prop, which is one of the most unpredictable things ever, and the MLS futures, which I couldn't even name you 3 players in the MLS probably.
Right. No, I was at a Sportico conference last week, and the guy that started the PFL spoke, and we chatted for a little bit after he came off stage, and he was like, look, like, he was very bearish on MLS. And I was like, why? He's like, MLS is the 9th most watched soccer league in the world. 9th. Like, he's like, this is, and he was kind of like a shot. The commissioner of the MLS was like on stage earlier, so it was like, oh, kind of awkward. But he's like, I am very bearish on the MLS, which is interesting because I feel like soccer is kind of regarded as this is like the next big thing in America. Like, soccer's gonna kill it here. But he's like, I agree with that, but it ain't the MLS. Like, right. It's the Premier League, and there's the every other international soccer league that's in 7 places ahead of the MLS. So it was an interesting take.
No, that's right. I mean, people, they want to see the sports at their highest quality, and so right. Just with streaming, the availability to see all these games, Paramount Plus does a pretty good job of streaming the Champions League. Peacock has the Premier League. There are a couple other European cups. Obviously there's the blow up of Wrexham from the Hulu show. So I agree. Soccer is blowing up. It's becoming more accessible. People are getting more knowledgeable about it. We got the World Cup coming up, but the MLS is you might as well be watching. It's like the equivalent of single A minor league baseball, basically, right? Like people would rather watch baseball at 9 a.m. of the highest quality than single A baseball at 6 p.m. So people, especially from work from home, like I know I do it. I've been watching way more international soccer ever since COVID than I was before, because everyone's sitting at home and can watch these games more easily. So but now I think we all have a little more interest in who wins the MLS, because I will certainly be rooting for LA to win it. And so now it is that time of the show to do our weekly segment of Stake or Swap. First up, we will be talking about the defending AFC champions, Cincinnati Bengals. They are currently 22-1 to win the Super Bowl. I will go first. I will stake the Bengals right now at 22-1. Currently, the Bengals are 8th in points per game and 7th in points allowed. Another stat I love is third down conversion percentage, which they currently rank 3rd in the league in third down percentages. And this is all given a really bad 0-2 start that the Bengals had. Burrow, he got sacked 13 times in those first 2 games. 13 times in the first 2 games. Since then, in the next 5 games, only 11 sacks given up. So obviously, the offensive line is getting it straight. He's obviously getting rid of the ball quicker, because he could not be getting sacked that many times. And so again, 13 the first 2 games, 11 the next 5. He's 2nd in the league in passing yards, and again, a 12-1 touchdown to interception rate in the last 5 games. So that team goes as Burrow goes, and so I think the last 5 games have been trending really well in the right direction. And then if you look up their upcoming schedule, they are at Cleveland, home versus Carolina, and then a bye week, and then at Pittsburgh and at Tennessee. I think all 4 of those are very winnable games. I get that 3 of the 4 are on the road, but I think they could easily win 3 of those 4, especially with the bye week in there to give them some extra prep against Pittsburgh. So I will be staking the Bengals at 22-1.
Yeah. All fair points about Burrow's sack rate. But I will be swapping the Cincinnati Bengals. I agree that they can make a run this year, that Cincinnati can make a run this year, but I am too intimidated by the Ravens. I think it's crazy that Lamar's, now in his 5th season, and I feel like teams still have not figured out how do we defend Lamar Jackson and this new offense that Greg Roman, in my opinion, deserves a ton more credit for. He just doesn't get the FaceTime / recognition that I feel like he deserves. He literally is inventing a new offense that nobody else has been doing, and it's working. And it's with a guy who still isn't that accurate of a passer, kind of like Jalen Hurts-ish, and their rushing attack. The Eagles' rushing attack is far superior, and their offensive line is far superior to the Ravens' offensive line. Ravens' rushing attack. The Ravens are doing this with scrub running backs. J.K. Dobbins just cannot stay on the field. So my point is, with a dismantled rushing attack, to still be putting up these numbers with Lamar Jackson is just super impressive. So I trust the Ravens too much. I think they finally will make a push. I don't think they're good enough to beat the Bills or the Chiefs. The issue with this offense is that when you get down 21-10 or 21-7, it's very difficult to score points quickly, and that's how the Bills and Chiefs play. Is they'll hang 21 on you in 5 minutes. So, but up until that point, I trust the Ravens enough, and more so than the Bengals. So I am swapping the Cincinnati Bengals, and then lastly, a good parlay, literally into the $90,000 parlay that we still have on PropSwap. It's still alive. It, of course, was Cam Smith to win the Open, Warriors to beat the Celtics in the NBA Finals. He bet the Braves to win the NL East, and now all he needs is the Bengals to win their division, and $100 returned into $90,000. The market value as of this podcast, the Bengals are around plus 170. Is that right? To win the division? Right. And so it's worth around 33,000. And we've informed the owner of this ticket that it is worth 33,000, and he in turn posted it for 50,000. So we're a little bit off in terms of what the bet is worth, and I've given him the analogy: if a car dealership was attempting to sell a Toyota Camry, which is around a $25,000 car, a $30,000 car for a brand new one, for $50,000, I think you would not trust that car dealership. So I have tried to explain to him, like, look, like, we will help you, and I will text the many personalities that we know, and on 7 years running this business, we will tweet it out, we will make it a featured ticket, but you got to price it fairly. And fair is 33,000. That's exactly the value that someone would pay right now. So working on it, definitely the growing pains of starting an industry like we're doing, starting a secondary market for sports bets is not easy. We definitely have learned that in 7 years so far. So I hope that he will come around and post it for a fair price. And we had a quick discussion today. He was of the opinion that a certain former Bengals wide receiver who might be named Ocho Cinco would pay 50,000 for this bet instead of the 30,000. And I don't agree with that because Chad is a smart guy. If we're talking about him or anyone else that's a huge Bengals fan, like, I think they would text one sports bettor and say, hey, I'm about to pay $50,000 for this. Is this a good bet? And any sports bettor would be like, absolutely not. That's a horrible bet. You can walk into any casino in the world right now that offers legal sports betting, or a bookie, of course, and make the exact same wager for half that price. So we're working on him. Hopefully he'll come around and get it posted for a fair price. But it's a great bet. Like, I want him to get paid for this thing. Turn $100 into $33,000 is mind-boggling cash with still plenty, way more than half the season to go. And again, you're dealing with the Ravens.
Yeah. And the only other thing I'll add is that, and I see this with other sellers, not just this guy in particular, but they don't want to feel like they're leaving a penny on the table, right? God forbid, correct, the could have gotten 33,000, but they only sell for 32,000, right? Like, God forbid that leave any money on the table. So their strategy is, I'm going to price it for 50. If it gets sold, fantastic. But I would still take a bit lower. And when I talk to buyers don't want to feel like they are wasting their time. When they feel like they are so far apart, they feel like all they're going to do is they're going to just be bidding against themselves. They feel like they're going to be wasting their time, that, there's no point in even into entering into these types of really serious, we start talking about throwing 30, 40 racks around. Like, these are serious conversations with serious people on the buying side. And so if they feel like they are vastly apart, and we're not talking about, the difference between $40 and $20, right? Which is, half of each other. We're talking about 50,000 versus 33,000. They don't even want to feel like they're wasting their time. Like, they want to deal with someone who is being dead serious about selling it. And while I do think this seller in particular, the Bengals ticket, is serious about selling it, he just, I'm not sure if he can't put himself in the shoes of the buyer and thinking that, like, why would I enter into these types of negotiations if he's thinking he's going to get 50,000 for it? And so, I agree. I think he is serious about selling it. I do think we will be able to make some progress on this thing. But yeah, I think the sooner he realizes that 33 is the ceiling and not the floor, the quicker we'll get a deal done. And then just
all right, Michael Jordan.
Yeah. I am wearing a Bulls hoodie, so maybe that's just in me today. And then just the last thing I was going to say about, you were talking about the Ravens and their rushing attack. Do you want to guess who has the 5th most rushing yards in the entire league?
Wow, is it Lamar?
Yeah. Lamar is 5th in the league in rushing yards. So they do have a fantastic running back. He just also plays quarterback at the same time. Speaking of fantastic quarterbacks, or at least that used to be fantastic, the next team we are going to talk about is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Currently, they can be found at 18-1 to win the Super Bowl. So, Luke, you can go first. Are you staking or swapping the Bucs?
I am so over this football team. I am swapping the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win the championship. I feel like they should be 40-1. Now, I will preface this by saying any bet that you see that's just so far off, like I would say more than 30% off the number that you think it should be, usually the books know something that you don't. So this may be a trap, and like I may be missing something that this team, PointsBet has them at 14-1. DraftKings has them at 15-1. Like, I might be missing something. The only thing I can think of logically, that explains it is they just know they're going to take so much action on Brady because he's such a popular guy that if they hang a 20-1 number or a 25-1 number, they'll just get killed by all the Brady fans out there. But I do not understand how you watch this football team and say they have a 1-in-15 shot to win the championship. The offensive line can't block. They're not running the ball well. The receivers can't catch a pass. Obviously, Mike Evans dropped that seam route. I think it was in the second quarter. They lost to an XFL quarterback this past weekend. And Ian and I talk about this all the time. When if you have a coach that gets fired, definitely the players want to prove that they're still legitimate and they're going to bust ass to win that game. So there's something going on there. I get that. But this is not the first NFL Sunday where Brady and the Bucs have just looked terrible. So I have to get off this train. I am swapping the Tampa Bay Bucs.
Yeah. I am torn on this, but I think I'm going to swap the Bucs as well. The fact that Tom Brady is going to Robert Kraft's birthday on a Friday night of a game week, and he took 2 weeks off in the offseason. I think he's dealing with a lot of family stuff, but this is not the same Tom Brady that we've seen in previous years where he's zero dark 30, just absolutely focused on winning the season. I think his personal life has just started to creep up too much onto his football life, and it's starting to bleed into his performance. He is getting rid of the ball way faster than he used to. He does not want to take these hits. The defense just quite isn't there. But the only reason why I was on the fence that I would maybe still stake the Bucs, and I'm aware that I staked them a couple weeks ago at 10-1, and they've lost as double-digit favorites ever since then. The division, man. The other teams in the division, the Falcons, the Panthers, the Saints. The Bucs are still they're as high as minus 275 to win the NFC South at PointsBet. And I think the worry, if you're the sports book, as to why you're not making the Bucs 40-1 to win the Super Bowl is that if the Bucs win the division and they get a first round home game and they're in the playoffs, Tom Brady could do anything for 3-4 games, right? So I do think that this team could still be bad and struggle their way to an NFC South title. And so that would be my only reason. But at the end of the day, unless something changes, this is not a good football team. Whether it's Bruce Arians leaving, Tom Brady being, half, 1 foot out the door, whatever it is, this team, I don't think is built for a playoff run. So I agree with you. I am going to swap the Bucs.
Yeah, and just wrapping up just the Tampa Bay schedule. In fairness, the other NFC, favorites are Eagles, Niners, Vikings, Cowboys. Those are the other 4 NFC teams ahead of them. I get it. Could they beat all of those teams? 100%. 100% they could. But it's just what you've shown me this year just seems like a fundamentally different Tom Brady / Bucs team than what we've seen the past 3 years. So I just nothing they've shown me on the field makes me want to trust them. And it's I'm going to bet a team just because it's possible they could beat other NFC teams. I just haven't seen it this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we've seen anything these past couple weeks, any team can beat any team. Like, I mean, I mean, you know, the Steelers are beating the Bucks with Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky. We talked about the Bears are going into New England and winning that game.
Colts beat the Chiefs. I still have no idea how the
Colts
beat the Chiefs.
And we haven't spent any time in this podcast talking about Aaron Rodgers, but maybe we can save that for another episode because I have no idea what's going on with him and in Green Bay. But I'm convinced there are only 3 good teams in the league, like the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Eagles, and there's a huge and then a drop off after that. I mean, I'm not ready to throw the Vikings into that conversation yet, but. So point being is like literally any team can beat any team. And so, when you talk about the upcoming schedules and that's why I say they are winnable games, but I wouldn't bet my life literally on any team beating any team straight up in this league.
Yeah, no, totally agree. There's the top 3 elite teams and a giant gap to the 4th best team. The Eagles dismantled the Vikings on that Monday night game. So, I completely agree.
Yeah. But you know what? It keeps us watching every week, and like I said, it makes it fun that you can turn a game on and you're not banking that's going to be a blowout because as we've seen, upsets are happening left and right. So we will keep on watching. Super excited for the World Series begins on Friday. Make sure to check PropSwap for some great deals on World Series tickets, as well as college football, NFL, NBA as well. And thank you for tuning in. Make sure to leave a rating and please subscribe, and we will talk to you next week.